You're listening to the CyberWire Network, powered by N2K.
Hi, I'm Maria Varmazes, and I'm the host of T-Minus, the only daily podcast for the space industry. Every weekday, I'll be covering the latest news in space technology, business, and governance by talking with the people who are forging the path in this new space era. If you're a space professional looking to separate the signal from the noise and stay current on what's happening, this show is for you. Join me every day for T-Minus, the daily space industry podcast. Listen on all major podcast platforms or visit space.n2k.com. That's space.n2k.com.
And now, a word from our sponsor, SpyCloud, the cybercrime analytics leader. SpyCloud disrupts cybercrime by telling you what criminals know about your business and your customers, so you can take action to prevent ransomware, account takeover, and online fraud. SpyCloud constantly recaptures and analyzes new data from the criminal underground, including credentials, cookies, and PII siphoned from malware-infected devices. With knowledge of the specific data criminals have in hand from InfoStealer malware on managed and unmanaged devices, security teams can respond with a more efficient and effective process called post-infection remediation. Get SpyCloud's post-infection remediation guide outlining the 7 steps for preventing a malware infection from becoming a full-blown ransomware incident. Visit spycloud.com/cyberwire. That's spycloud.com/cyberwire. And we thank SpyCloud for sponsoring our show. The 3CX compromise involved a 2-stage supply chain attack, impersonating ChatGPT. Russia's security units say they're cracking down on leaks. Updates on the Discord Papers case. Belarus arrests a pro-Russian hacktivist. Rob Boyce from Accenture Security on dark web cyber criminals targeting CRM systems. Our guest is Mike Lowy from the Tide Foundation with an innovative approach to distributed key security. And is Minsk going wobbly on Moscow? From the CyberWire studios at Data Tribe, I'm Dave Bittner with your CyberWire summary for Thursday, April 20th, 2023. Mandiant reported this morning that the exploitation of 3CX, a supply chain attack, was itself enabled by a previous supply chain attack. The company's report said, in March 2023, Mandiant Consulting responded to a supply chain compromise that affected 3CX desktop app software. During this response, Mandiant identified that the initial compromise vector of 3CX's network was via malicious software downloaded from Trading Technologies' website. This is the first time Mandiant has seen a software supply chain attack lead to another software supply chain attack. The attack is being attributed to UNC 4736, generally regarded as a North Korean threat actor. Its activities have been related to the financially motivated North Korean Apple Juice activity, as reported by CISA. Palo Alto Network's Unit 42 wrote today that they're observing increased malicious activity impersonating ChatGPT. The hackers have been seen creating sites claiming to be OpenAI and attempting to trick users into sharing personal information, or even in some cases paying for the ChatGPT service. From November of last year through early this month, the researchers observed a 910% increase in web domains that were ChatGPT related. They say that in this same time frame, we observed a 17,818% growth of related squatting domains from DNS security logs. Detections of around 118 ChatGPT-related malicious URLs were also caught daily by the company's URL filtering system. The faux sites are said to be reminiscent of OpenAI's legitimate site, but seek to exfiltrate user data or even attempt to make the user pay for ChatGPT, which, when legitimately used through OpenAI, is free. The Institute for the Study of War reports that Russia's FSB is undertaking a comprehensive overhaul of the company's security apparatus, apparently in response to a growing concern about leaks and security breaches. The Institute says Russian state-controlled outlet TASS reported on April 19th that the FSB and the main directorate of the Security Service of the Ministry of Internal Affairs have been conducting mass checks at the Moscow Central District Internal Affairs Directorate and several Moscow district police offices for the past several weeks, due to the leakage of data from Russian security forces at the request of Ukrainian citizens. Police departments appear to be the focus of what amounts to an incipient purge. The researchers state the reported FSB and MVD raids on the Moscow police departments are occurring against the backdrop of a series of arrests and dismissals of prominent members of the Rosgvardia, Russian National Guard, leadership. The Kremlin may be pushing for such arrests and investigations in order to conduct an overhaul of the domestic security apparatus to oust officials who have fallen out of Kremlin favor and consolidate further control of internal security organs. That's certainly possible, and there's plenty of historical precedent in Russia for this sort of purge, but the possibility that the security organizations are spooked by leaks is also a real one. The U.S. has also had recent difficulty with leaks. Jack Teixeira, the Air National Guardsman alleged to have taken and leaked the Discord papers to a small group of young and besotted followers on the gamer social platform, has been charged, is in custody awaiting trial, and has yet to enter a plea. The New York Times, which has published a review of where the case stands, comments on the apparent motive, which appears to be devoid of the usual elements of ideology or political commitment, and also of any compromise or financial gain. The motive seems to have been as simple as a desire to show off in front of online friends. The head of Anonymous Russia, a young man who went by the hacker name Reti, has, according to Killnet, been arrested by Belarusian authorities, Flashpoint reports. It's worth noting that this particular group is not the Anonymous that sought to pester Russia, but rather an alternative organization devoted to Russia's cause and operating as a kind of junior partner to Killnet. Killnet has said it would appoint a new leader for Anonymous Russia. The reconstituted group will concentrate on two things. First, they've declared a war on CIA rats, an expression that in their reading means pro-Ukrainian hacktivist groups such as the IT Army of Ukraine, a group of pro-Ukrainian hacktivists formed shortly after Russia's 2022 invasion, which is specifically named in one of the channel's messages. The mention of this trope, lifted from Russian propaganda, is likely meant to confirm the new group's pro-Kremlin credentials. Second, the group has also announced that it would transform itself into a DDoS-for-hire group that anyone can purchase. However, it also specified that the project would be aimed at Dark Web 2. This latter announcement suggests that Anonymous Russia will perform DDoS attacks against darknet markets similarly to Killnet. It's unclear why Reti was arrested, but Killnet was quick to identify and, Forcepoint says, dox him. The reconstituted Anonymous Russia seems to be moving, along with its better-known and more active, bigger colleague Killnet, in the direction of a profit-making enterprise. Last month, Killnet said that it was organizing itself as a private cyber operations corporation along the lines of the Wagner Group, the notorious private military corporation. The rise of Wagner-like groups in cyberspace was the subject of a warning this week by the UK's NCSC, which, according to the record, is warning that such groups are expected to represent a particular threat to critical infrastructure. And finally, lest one conclude that the arrest of Reti was a sign that Minsk was going wobbly on Moscow, that's pretty clearly not happening. Ghostwriter is back. Polish authorities say that a major propaganda campaign by the Belarusian group Ghostwriter was detected on April 18th. Attribution was unusually quick, and Poland has taken steps to control any damage. The Record reports, the group's goal in Poland is to disrupt the country's relations with its allies, including Ukraine, the U.S., and NATO countries, according to Poland's Ministry of National Defense. The group's campaigns have also aimed to foment social unrest among Polish citizens. It's that old familiar mischief-making. Don't worry about persuasion, just go for confusion. Coming up after the break, Rob Boyce from Accenture Security on dark web cybercriminals targeting CRM systems. Our guest is Mike Lowy from the Tide Foundation with an innovative approach to distributed key security. Stay with us. And now, a word from our sponsor, KnowBe4. Where would InfoSec professionals be without users making security mistakes? Working less than 60 hours per week, maybe. Actually having a weekend every so often. While user behavior can be a challenge, they can also be an InfoSec professional's greatest asset once properly equipped. Users want to do the right thing, but often lack the knowledge to do so. That's one of the reasons KnowBe4 developed Security Coach, a real-time security coaching tool that takes alerts from your existing security stack and sends immediate coaching to users who've taken risky actions. Existing security tools will likely block a user from visiting a high-risk website, for example, but the user might not understand why. Security Coach analyzes these alerts and provides users with relevant security tips via email or Slack, coaching them on why the action they just took was risky. Help users learn from their mistakes and strengthen your organization's security culture with Security Coach. Learn more at knowbe4.com/securitycoach. That's knowbe4.com/securitycoach. And we thank KnowBe4 for sponsoring our show. Never refactor your apps again. Never get locked into an IDP. Say goodbye to your old on-prem systems and identity-managed complexity. Now you can solve your biggest IAM problems with identity orchestration, even the messy ones you thought were unsolvable. Bring Strata any IAM use case, like modernizing legacy apps to use passwordless authentication, migrating from one IDP to another, or enabling identity operation resiliency. Strata's identity orchestration platform is designed to extend the value of your identity infrastructure, no matter the complexity or scale. What's more, Strata's software is lightweight and flexible, developer-friendly, and vendor-agnostic. Want to see it in action? Share your identity challenge with Strata on a discovery call, and they'll hook you up with a complimentary pair of AirPods Pro. Don't miss out. Visit strata.io/cyberwire. That's strata.io/cyberwire. An organization called the Tide Foundation is looking to improve cybersecurity with a clever approach to access keys that splits them into millions of pieces distributed across 20 distributed servers around the world. Mike Lowy is co-founder of the Tide Foundation.
What we're looking to do is to redefine the authority model in the digital world. Today, we have a scenario where the security of our systems and the protection of sensitive information is all, at the end of the day, reliant on blind trust. Blind trust in the people that build, administer, and manage our IT systems. And those people today have effectively carte blanche authority over the sensitive information that these systems hold. And we're looking to redefine that so that that's no longer the case.
When we say blind trust, what exactly do we mean by that?
So if you think about even take into account zero trust. So zero trust, a methodology that was kind of introduced 10 years ago. But even with the implementation of zero trust, we're still seeing the most horrific breaches in history, and breaches have increased in frequency and severity. And the reason for that is because no matter how much effort we put into applying that model of constantly verifying and checking and making sure that, you know, whoever we're providing this access to is who they say they are, there is some kind of root authority, something somewhere that has to make that final decision of, can I provide access to this resource? Can you swipe and open this front door? Can you access this file? And that authority lives somewhere on something and is administered by someone.
Mm-hmm.
And that means that there's always this kind of Achilles heel that exists inside of a system, whether it's the identity and access management system, the firewall, whatever security apparatus it is, and there's no way to verify the integrity of those people administering those systems, whether there's malintent or whether they're just human beings that make mistakes, accidentally click on the wrong links. That's what I mean.
And so what is it that you're proposing here? What's the technology behind what you're looking to accomplish here?
So if you think about even a banking system. So a banking system holds a huge amount of information on its customers. It would have identity information, financial history, all kinds of information that at certain points in time is required by the bank. At certain points in time is required by the customer. But beyond those points in time when that information is needed, the system, there's no good reason for the system to have access or authority over that information. In fact, it doesn't want it because it's a liability for the bank, and it's a huge risk for the end customer if that information is then appropriated or misappropriated. What we're looking to do is using a technology to effectively decouple the authority over digital assets, for want of a better word, whether that's like identity information, financial information, or even network access rights, and decouple that from the systems that today it lives inside of. So if you think about each customer record in a bank being locked with a different key, and none of those keys sitting in the bank system anymore. So even your super users, your administrators, don't have access to those keys. And putting those keys somewhere where they can be used only as appropriate, but cannot be stolen, cannot be used in a context outside of what they were designed to do. And that's and from a technology perspective, what we've done is to have those keys not live anywhere, but kind of live everywhere. So a key is in fact born in 20 pieces across a fully decentralized network and operated in a way that it's never actually put together. So effectively, no one holds that key.
Well, help me understand here, because I think a common line of thought here could be that don't you need a key to access the keys? You know, it's keys all the way down, right? Like I think about even with something like my password manager or something like that. Ultimately, there's a master key, but what you're saying is you all have found a clever way around that.
So that's an awesome question. So your password, your master password to your password manager is effectively the keys to the kingdom. The question is, where does that key sit? Where does that master password live? And how is that master password authenticated or validated to check that you've entered that password incorrectly? So if that is being performed by any single server, any centralized service, again, which is administered by people or is accessible to people, then it's always compromisable. If that process of even validating a password is done in a way that no one ever gets to see the password. Password doesn't live anywhere in that kind of singular form. Then the integrity of the process that checks that password is sacrosanct, can't be circumvented, and there's no longer a central repository holding all of those usernames and passwords and sitting in one convenient place for an attacker to steal and kind of perform all kinds of interesting brute force attacks offline. So what we've developed is a way to authenticate a user, be it first or second factor. Obviously, adding additional factors is highly advisable. But starting with just that very root, ubiquitous form of authentication, username and password, but making sure that password lives nowhere and that password is checked in a way that no one actually gets access to the secret, to the password itself. And we do that using a decentralized network where it's almost like multiple servers performing a small part of that process in a way that reveals no information to them. And in fact, that those servers don't even know what they're doing and for whom.
And what does all this look like to the user? What's the user experience like?
Absolutely no change to the user experience. So from the end user's perspective, they're typing a username and password into their banking platform or their social media site or whatever they're authenticating to. Behind the scenes, that password is being authenticated by 20 different endpoints simultaneously rather than one singular source. So as far as the user is concerned, they enter a username and password. That could be through a browser, but there's no one in the middle that can compromise that process.
That's Mike Lowy from the Tide Foundation. And joining me once again is Robert Boyce. He is Managing Director and Global Lead for Cyber Resilience at Accenture. Rob, it's always great to welcome you back to the show. My wife is currently car shopping, and that means that one of the things she's considering is getting an EV car, an electric car. And so we've been weighing all the pros and cons with that. And I know you and your colleagues have been looking at EV cars and charging stations and some of the potential vulnerabilities there. What can you share with us today?
Hi, Dave, and thanks so much for having me back. And as an EV owner myself, I am also very passionate about this topic. So, this is, of course, something the security community has been talking about a lot. It just happens to be now that we're seeing so many more EVs on the road that the topic's it's becoming even more prevalent. And, I think it's interesting because a lot of people are always asking, well, don't combustion engine cars have computer chips? Why are we not concerned about them? And I think it's just the absolute magnitude of the presence of the computerized cars in the EV. Like a standard combustion engine maybe has 100, 150 chips in it, where these EVs are having 20 times that. So as you can imagine, the exposure is just phenomenal. And then when you think about the connectivity that these cars have, either being, they typically have connections back to the manufacturer or the dealers, or maybe even the rental agency. Just that level of attack surface makes them a very potentially interesting target for threat actors.
So what are the primary concerns here? I mean, are we talking about ransomware? Are we talking about privacy issues? What are you all tracking?
Yeah, it's a great question. And so, what we've seen in the research is that there's a number of different possible threat scenarios. A ransomware is a great one. So as you know, we've seen ransomware for the last several years be a very big vulnerability for organizations. But imagine, threat actors were able to ransom your car and you couldn't start it without having to pay them, or being able to move from a charging station into a car, or maybe even take over or penetrate an EV manufacturer, because they all have over-the-air updates, and being able to use that network to compromise many vehicles simultaneously. these potential scenarios are super fascinating. And of course, as you can imagine, there's a human safety element to this as well. Like, so as you're in your car and someone's able to take over your car and maybe start driving it for you, and you don't have the control anymore, that's a huge concern. And we haven't seen this happen in the wild yet, but we have seen researchers successfully take over a car and make it drive erratically in the test scenario.
What about the charging stations themselves? I mean, to what degree is there actually relevant or important communications going on between the stations and the vehicles?
Yeah, the charging stations are also super interesting. I mean, especially the public charging stations, as you can imagine, that they're typically connected to cloud or connected via cellular network. So, which makes them, themselves a very attractive attack surface for threat actors. And the majority of these charging stations are operating with an open protocol that allows them to be able to take many different manufacturers connecting to, a single public charging station. So they have to use some level of open protocol for that. And, the information that's being transferred back and forth is, just being able to identify the car. But again, there is always the possibility of malware being transmitted from a car to a charging station, from a charging station to a car. And then, as you can imagine, the more and more cars that are using these public infrastructures, being a possible attack vector is quite significant.
As an EV owner yourself, how do you approach this? I mean, it's not like with a computer where you can say, "Hey, don't click the links." Like what are there best practices to try to make yourself not be the low-hanging fruit?
I knew you would ask me this question when I said I had an EV myself, and it's almost a little embarrassing for someone who's been doing security for like 25 years. But I can promise you, it wasn't even a consideration that I had when I was choosing my car. I wanted something that was really cool. It had a good user experience, good interface, and just the prospect of full autonomous driving is very exciting. So even someone like me definitely overlooked security as a possible requirement when I'm buying it. But, I mean, there's some things that you can do and some things that are harder. Like, I typically try and stay away from public charging stations, try and charge my car at home. But when you're thinking about updates and things like that, there's not really a lot of optionality, I would say, in that. You're taking the update or you're not taking the update from the manufacturer. So at this time, there's not a lot a consumer can do. What is exciting, we are seeing a lot of focus in this area, right? So the Biden White House had a lot of people within the EV industry last, I think it was October, at the White House talking about security in the space. We've seen transportation agencies also start talking about security implications in the space. So I think we're going to start seeing more regulations that will help manufacturers start making sure that they're embedding more security. I think this is a very, very young industry. And of course, as you can imagine, with any young industry, first to market is super important. And so I think, I'm not saying security has necessarily been overlooked, but I don't think it's necessarily been a priority from the manufacturer's point of view. It's really, I think just with any young industry, we need to learn more about security and how it applies to this industry to make sure we're really safeguarding the consumers appropriately.
All right. Make sure you have your seatbelts properly fitted and secured, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Rob Boyce, thanks so much for joining us. And now, a word from our sponsor, Halcyon. Ransomware is still one of the largest threats facing businesses in 2023. The Halcyon platform was built to stop it through a multi-layered protection approach featuring full encryption key capture, automated decryption, and the ability to prevent other security tools on the endpoint from being unhooked. Learn more about how they're leveraging Capsule network-based machine learning to reduce ransomware recovery times down to minutes by visiting halcyon.ai. And that's the CyberWire. For links to all of today's stories, check out our daily briefing at thecyberwire.com. The CyberWire podcast is a production of N2K Networks, proudly produced in Maryland out of the startup studios of Data Tribe, where they're co-building the next generation of cybersecurity teams and technologies. This episode was produced by Liz Irvin and senior producer Jennifer Iben. Our mixer is Trey Hester, with original music by Elliot Peltzman. The show was written by John Petrick. Our executive editor is Peter Kilpie, and I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here tomorrow. This episode is made possible in part by RSA Conference, where the world talks security. Through global events and year-round content, RSAC connects you to cybersecurity leaders and cutting-edge ideas for a safer, more secure future. Learn more at rsaconference.com/cyberwire23. And now, a word from our sponsor, Mimecast. You're wondering if you need more email and collaboration security, because, as it turns out, just protecting your workspace with M365 isn't good enough. You just watched your entire company grind to a screeching halt, all because someone opened a phishing email. Next time, don't rely on one-size-fits-all security. Protect your inbox with Mimecast and diversify your security stack. For a free trial, go to mimecast.com and keep your business from, falling apart. On a final note, our friends at N2K just launched T-, the only daily space podcast. Here's what you can expect from the show. Stay tuned for T-, ready to launch.
We are in a new space era. Advances in engineering and manufacturing have given us access to the heavens in ways that seemed almost unthinkable not that long ago. Private and public sector cooperation in the space industry is leading to innovation that sometimes feels like it's right out of a page of science fiction. But these achievements in space are real, and they're bringing incredible advances in defense, communications, infrastructure, engineering, and science to all of us right here on Earth. And they're happening fast. Join me. I'm Maria Varmazes, and I'm the host of T-, the daily space podcast for the space industry. Every day, you'll get the news and analysis you need to stay current on what's happening in space technology, business, and governance. To do that, I'll be talking with the people who are forging the path in this new space era, from industry leaders, technology experts and pioneers, to educators, policymakers, research organizations, and more. If you're a space professional looking to separate the signal from the noise and stay current on what's happening, this show is for you. Join me every day for T-, the daily space industry podcast. T-. Available on all major podcast platforms.